What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Rush Hour Talk. This is Pete.
This is Ray.
And today we have a real special guest for you today. We have one of the most flyest K-pop looking guys that I've ever met. I called him the Asian Casanova when we were younger. Straight from Taiwan, here to terrorize your wooden basketball. We got Dave Wang on today. What's up, Dave? How you doing, man?
What's up, Fang? What's up, Ray? How are you guys doing?
We're doing well, man. It's glad to have you on.
Yeah. We've been talking about this for a while, so happy to be here.
From what I understand, this isn't your first podcast.
I had some run-ins with the radios before, and it was fun. It was just talking about kind of my, I guess, immigration story.
Mm-hmm.
So it was how I was able to transition from being kind of the fob, and then really transition into kind of the American culture, and eventually kind of pave my own path.
Was this something you did here, or something you did for people back home in Taiwan?
It was actually for somebody here. She was my classmate from the MBA, and she was really looking for somebody to tell her story that's a little bit more unique. So I think I was, yeah.
It's an honor to have you on today because your story is a very, very unique one. Just a little bit about Dave before we move on to, don't let his demeanor fool you. When we're in a competitive mode or we're playing basketball, yes, he plays basketball. We've got some stories to talk about there, but he's kind of a jack of all trades, right, Ray? You've known him for a while too.
I've known him for a while. Yep.
I think competitiveness comes to mind. I think Dave's got a lot of fire, for lack of a better word.
Massive shit talker.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
there it is.
That's why I don't play basketball with people at work. Because I don't want to show that side of me. And
really?
I think one time I played with people from my business school, and I ended up just not being the best version of myself sometimes on the basketball court. When things got competitive, an ugly side of me comes out sometimes.
I remember this one time when Dave got super competitive and stuff, and then I came down and he fouled me super hard, right? And this is my version of the story. I don't care what Dave's version of the story. He fouled me really hard, and I was trying to cool. I was keeping it cool, this is just Dave. He's just getting competitive. And then I came down again, and that fool pretty much nearly clotheslines the shit out of me. And then he grabs the ball. He's like, "What's up, dog? Why you being a little bitch?" He's like, "Why you being a little bitch about it?"
Well, I gotta say, that was one of the few times that Peter and I were on a different team. Because usually when we play basketball, we're either on the same team or we're cheering for one another, even if we're not playing together. That's one of the few times that we actually knew each other and we're on different teams. Because before I knew Peter, we always play at Woodend, and then that's one of the things that I actually really enjoyed when I first met Peter, is because he always brings the fire when he plays as well. So that's why when I used to watch him while I was waiting for games, I was like, man, I wish I'm on that guy's team, because he always was able to take big shots and hit them, and was able to always kind of motivate his teammates. So I was like, man, I wish I'm on that guy's team. And eventually when we get to know each other, and then we always play with each other. So I never really had a chance to play against him when I actually knew him. So that's one of the few times we play against each other while we actually knew each other. And I think this is how it went down. Peter was unstoppable that game. He scored 2 or 3 shots in one of my teammates' face. So I was like, yo, we need to switch. So I switched on Peter, and then I think I stripped him in one of the possession, and I was like, yo, what up, man? And then Peter was like, oh, okay. This is how it is. So the next time he came down, I was trying to do the same thing, and I ended up fouling him really hard. But then at that heat of the moment, you're just like, man, it's all ball, man. Why are you being a bitch?
All ball, dog.
Yeah, so and then the following possession, it was because I think Peter was trying to use the same move on
Mm.
me, and I was just like pissed because I was like, man, like I couldn't guard that shit. So I just like completely like leveled him, and then that's when we started like having an actual argument. And then the meat of the story was Pete actually headbutted me because I got into his face, and he headbutted me on the nose, and then like I started bleeding. And I think that's when like both of us came to our senses. Was like, oh, what the fuck?
Oh my god! I know that didn't even last that long. It was heated at the moment. I did what I did. I looked at Wang's face, and Wang was just shocked. He was like, he was just like, what the?
I've heard both sides, and it sounds like it was all Peter's fault.
I mean, we had this discussion before. I think in order to become Peter's best friends, you have to get hit by him. Because I think he hit Kin. I think he hurt Frank when they were young. The only reason Peter probably didn't hit Ray is because Ray, you were bigger than him.
Wait, so how's COVID been for you, Dave? I know you, Michelle, new parents of my nephew Donnie over there. Like, how have you guys been holding up? Through these times? I'm sure it's been an adjustment period for sure.
Yeah, I think COVID hits parents differently, right? Because
100%.
I mean, Donovan used to be able to just go to like childcare and kind of free up some time for me and Michelle, but now it's very different. He's most of the time home, and we, on top of working from home, you're really trying to take care of your toddler. So it's actually like very difficult to get some free time.
How has it been over the last couple of years being Donnie's dad and just being a dad in general?
I mean, I think nobody really was ready to be a dad until they become one. So I think, in the beginning, we did plan to have Donnie, but like throughout the process, it just felt very surreal. Like I was like, oh, is it really happening? Like, what am I doing? Kind of situation. Yeah. And then when Donovan finally arrived, it's like, oh yeah, like, I'm starting to take on, a little bit more responsibility to make sure, like to put Donovan's needs first. And that was a weird transition, right? Because I think for the most part, before Donovan, I was really trying to focus on my career, trying to really like get ahead. And when Donovan arrived, I have to like reshuffle some of my priority to adjust to that. So that was definitely something different.
Yeah. And if you had to say right now, is Donnie a Lakers fan or a Rockets fan?
I mean, depending on who you ask, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah,
if you ask me, he is for sure a Rockets guy.
It's funny. You haven't met our friend Bez. I don't know if you met Bezrat yet.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's a Ethiopian guy. Him and his wife have the same kind of dynamic at home. She's a Rockets fan and he's a Lakers fan. So.
What? I need to meet her. I need to meet his wife.
So she grew up in the Houston area and she went to University of Texas. So it was fun talking shit to her.
How the hell did you end up being a Houston Rockets fan? Now I know it was even before. No, it's probably before Yao Ming got there, but I believe it was T-Mac, right?
Anywhere outside of the U.S., the fanship is really like whoever had championship. Yeah. So, I mean, when I was young in Taiwan, when I first got into basketball, everybody was like a Bulls fan, right? Because that was when the Jordan era in the 80s, like late 80s, early 90s, when I was old enough to really, care and understand basketball. Everybody was a Bulls fan, a Jordan fan, or even like a Pippen fan if you're not like mainstream. So I think that's like one of the things that I learned early, that I don't want to be a bandwagon fan. So I was like, oh, everybody's a Bulls fan, I want to be something else. So at that time, I was first actually a Pacers fan. It was crazy. Because at that
Because of
time
Reggie or what?
it was like Reggie, Rick Smith,
Chris
and like
Smith. Yeah.
Dell Davis,
Yep.
like, and I was like, and Mark Jackson, and I was like, oh man.
Oh yeah.
And then Reggie was like, you know, talking a lot of shit. I was like, yo, this is the
that's
guy.
your guy.
Yeah,
That's your
I was
guy.
like, this is my guy. And then they just never got anything done. So I was like, man, forget them. and then
Well, they got like Jalen later on too, right? Jalen.
Yeah,
and
Jalen
Ron.
Rose. Yeah, but that was
Yeah.
like later on.
Later. Yeah.
I already moved on from them. So, but then at that time, I think besides Jordan, Rockets actually won 2 championships in between when Jordan's went to play baseball, right? So it was like Alon Juan, Robert Ory, Sam Cassell, that group.
Kenny the Jet Smith.
Yeah, Kenny. And then so that's when I was like, oh man, Rockets is actually pretty good. So I actually became like a Rockets fan back then. After like Pacers like destroy my, you know, childhood dreams. But anyways, and so I became a Rockets fan. But then like I didn't have that kind of loyalty tied to the team just because, you know, I wasn't from the state. I didn't really have any like thing that tie me to the team or to any specific players back in the days. So I was just like, yeah, I really like the Rockets. I think I'm a fan. But I think overall, I'm just a really big basketball fan. So I just continue to follow. And I was like, oh, okay. Like whenever Rockets games on, I was like, oh, cool. Like I get to see the Rockets. So kind of went through like I also went through a downturn as well, just because as kids get older in Taiwan, the amount of pressure academically that they had was insane just because kids start to have to study for like an SAT basically to get into high school. So like for high school, you got to take the SAT, and the SAT is not just like 2 subjects like English and math. It's like English, math, chemistry, biology, geology, like, you know, like all the shit that you learn, like so English, Chinese. So like there's like fucking 10 subjects, and then you have to like study to get into a good high school, and then from the good high school you have a better chance to get into a good college. And getting to college, you have to take another test, standardized test, and it's like also like 10 different subjects. So it's like starting from like middle school, you're just like, the amount of pressure like they put on you to study and get into a high school is insane. So, you know, I kind of stopped following basketball when I was a little bit older, like maybe like 8th grade or something like that, just because I have to like really prepare myself for the test. And then like, you know, luckily, after I took the entrance exam for high school in Taiwan, I moved to the States. So I didn't have that kind of pressure continue to build up. So like when I actually moved to the States, I started to follow basketball again. And that's when I was like, oh, like Rockets actually still pretty good. Like I can get on board. And especially because at that time, I think that's when Tracy McGrady was emerging as a star, even though he wasn't at the Rockets first. But since I didn't really have any loyalty first, I was just like, oh, like T-Max is my guy. Like I follow him wherever he went. So he was at the Raptors first, and then he went to Orlando. So I was like following him. And then eventually when he went to the Rockets, I was like, oh, yo, this is a dream come true. And then
they did Yao, right?
And then Yao happened. I was like, yo, it's like they read my mind. Combining my ethnicity, culture, the player that represent that with like my favorite player in the NBA together on the same team. So that was like naturally just happened for me, and I was very lucky. Yeah,
that's awesome. I always thought it was the Yao Ming route, not the T-Mac route. But now that I think back to it, I can remember you wearing a couple T-Mac shoes.
yeah, I was a huge T-Mac fan. Yeah. I think it was also one of the mentality that you don't want to be mainstream, right? Because the mainstream was Kobe.
Yeah.
Like everybody was like, oh, I'm a Kobe guy, blah, blah. I was like, nah, I'm a T-Mac guy.
Yeah. But I remember even going to your apartment and seeing this giant bobblehead, like poster of
Yeah,
T-Mac
yeah.
on the wall, and like this Yao Ming Shanghai Sharks jersey, you know, in your closets and stuff like that. I was like, this guy's for real, man.
Yeah.
He's for real. He's not just being an anti-Laker or anything like that. He's a legitimate fan, and like his shoes showed it, you know. And I remember when he would even play, he would wear his Shanghai Sharks Yao Ming jersey, you know, him and his pasty arms. But you know, he was like, oh! He was ferocious, man. And then, you know, and then I think it's perfect too because Ron Artest made his way over to the Rockets, and you know, for those of you who know Wang on the court, I feel like, you know, he's a mixture of all those three guys that are pretty iconic put into one. You know, minus the NBA level talent, but but it was shocking to me, but it made sense after, you know, we got to know each other, and you might be through and through probably the truest Houston fan that I know outside of people from Houston. I mean, they're not very prevalent here.
It's crazy because that's why I need to meet your friend's wife, because I don't think I've met any Houston fan in LA.
They both used to live in LA, but they moved back to Texas.
One of the things I think was the craziest was actually when I first played with Peter. And I think it was actually out of the group, I think I met Eric and David Steiner first. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I met Eric is really funny because I used to have this organic chemistry class, and I was just like so not into it. Every time I like actually drove to campus and tried to go to that class, and every time I just ended up at the arcade in Ackerman. So I never like went to that class. And then, you know who's always there? Fucking Eric Gonzalez is always there playing the arcade. And, you know, in the beginning I was just like, oh, whatever, it's like a random dude. And then like I was never able to beat him in Street Fighter. And I was like a pretty decent Street Fighter guy just because I'm Asian, you know. Like,
because you're Asian? What the fuck, man? You never played me, bro. You never played me.
But it's just like the gamer culture, you know.
Yeah,
so I was just like, you know, like who the hell is this dark guy? Because I didn't even know like what ethnicity Eric was. I was just like, man, like.
Yeah, he's pretty ambiguous looking. Like, he can pass for a lot of things.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. But then he was killing me in Street Fighter, and I was just like upset all the time. I was like spending like $10 trying to like challenge him. And it's like each game is like 50 cents. So I'd be like challenging him like multiple times. And I was like, I can't win. So I was like, forget it. And I started like talking to him. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to go play basketball after this. I was like, oh shit, me too. So like we ended up playing together, and Steiner and him were like best friends in college. So we always ended up on the same team playing together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Peter started to come, and Peter's always on a different team. So it's like me, Eric Steiner, and then some two random dude against Peter. I don't even know who Peter rolled with. Peter and Frank.
I was a straggler, honestly. I actually didn't make that many friends. I think I probably made more enemies than anything, but I think no, and it's true. You know, like our friend, he would tell me all the time. He's like, I hated you so much. I hated you back then so much.
That's funny. Why did he hate you, actually?
Yeah, he listed out reasons, too. He's like, I hated that you wore tights. I hated that you were confident whether or not you win or lose. And he was like, and I hated that you had you always had girls around you or something like that. And I was like, well, I mean, it's not what you think it is. I mean, these girls are here, but it's not like that, you know what I mean? Like, they're actually so like I felt like I wasn't there to make friends necessarily, right? But I guess Frank made some friends. Like Frank met Eric first, Frank met Wang first, Frank met Kathy first, and then I was more like Frank's buddy for the most part. And you know, I remember Wang had David. You had like a few crews, you know what I mean? You had like your classmate friends, and then you had like separate people you met at Wooden, and then you had like, you know, Steiner and Eric and stuff too. So like it was we're bound to play with each other and meet each other eventually. And Ray, you were part of all of that too. You know, we grew up essentially kind of like our journey post high school basketball, right?
Yeah, I remember Ray got brought into the team because I never met Ray before, and
yeah, I was going to ask you how you met.
I think it's one of the tournaments
Yeah.
where we had to sign like an exception because we always join like an Asian league or something.
Right.
And Ray is always the exception. That we have to like submit some paperwork for Ray. It's like, hey, yo, we're gonna bring a ringer. Please approve.
Not really a ringer.
And then Ray ended up shooting like 2 for 20. But it's all
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Like I said, not really a ringer, man.
No, but
Not
Ray would
either.
shoot 2 for 20, but get like 15 offensive rebound from his own miss.
I mean, we used to call Ray automatic in high school, man. I think it was probably a combination of you guys not passing the ball to him in the right spots. Because, I mean, like, I don't remember any sick passes you've ever done, Wang. And I mean,
No, we need to review the stat sheet. Because
We
I
can,
have a stat sheet. I don't know, one of the league that we all play together. I'm actually the leading assist guy on the team.
Like Peter was the only one that really understood that. Like I was put in a position that like didn't allow me to be the player that I normally am when I'm playing with Peter outside of it. But at the end of the day, it was still fun playing with all you guys.
Yeah, it was great. And
Yeah, it was
I
great.
know that we talk a lot of shit, but Ray was actually one of the best defenders that we ever had on the team.
Yeah, I had to. Yeah.
So like
No
whenever there was like a tough defensive assignment, we didn't even like think twice. We just like, Ray got him.
Basketball for me was never really about the scoring because, like, usually I used to be able to score a shit ton, but it was all about like winning. I know sometimes that I clashed with some of you guys too, you know, but it was all for. It was all we were young, very very competitive. We wanted to win. Winning felt fucking great.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think the three of us. I don't think we've ever questioned each other's defensive effort. Because I think
the three of us, yeah. You were. I was always afraid that you would be too much because you foul. Like, oh god, Dave. It was like, Dave, don't swipe, but you would swipe. I remember I would always say, just move your feet. Like, yeah, you were pretty aggressive on defense, and yeah, at the end of the day, like I felt like we definitely could have won a lot more, but we never. There were a few times we became one unit. It was almost like you have a team of a lot of really talented players, but the chemistry was lacking in certain places, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, chemistry is, I think, why we lost some of our games, but it was still really fun. I mean,
that or a hangover.
Honestly, back then when we first started playing, the hangovers didn't really bother me as much. Now I would say maybe first 10 minutes, but
since we're talking about partying, I remember how crazy Dave was about partying, right?
Shit, he met me, some guy that he barely knew. He just like, I'll meet you in Vegas.
Dave Wang at the time, he was getting his master's in biochem, and he was, talking to me all week, like, man, I can't wait to be finished. If I'm done with this, we're gonna go. And then like he had his oral, I think, and that was the last thing he had to do that day. And I was like, oh, you know what? If you do that, celebrate, let's go to Vegas the next day. That motherfucker calls me right after his oral. Hey dog, are you ready? And I was like literally like eating my lunch still. And I was having like a late lunch. I was like, ready for what? How did your oral go? He's like, good dog. I'm on my way to your house. I was like, hey, what the fuck are you mean? And I swear to God, like I wasn't packed. I was still in a cutoff and basketball shorts. He shows up to my house. I was just throwing shit into a luggage, and it was like one of the hottest days in summer, right? We got into his car, and I threw all my shit in, and I'm still wearing the same things like when he called me. And then we got into his car, and we were driving, and at the time we're living together, right? We're living in like Alhambra or something like that.
Reno.
And then we're on the freeway. We get to like right around the 605. And at the time, Dave was driving his BMW, right?
3 Series.
Yeah, 3 Series. We're all like, yeah, hell yeah, we're going to Vegas. We're in the BMW. We're going to celebrate and shit. And then as we're rocking out, I hear like, the fucking AC goes out, right? It's like probably one of the hottest days of the year. The AC goes out. And then I look at him and he looks at me. He's like, the AC went out. I look at him. I'm like, no shit. You know what I mean? And then we looked at each other and we looked back, actually literally looked back, and we're at the 605. We're like, nah, we've gone too far. Let's just keep going. So we drove the whole fucking trip with the windows down, hot as fuck. Not realizing that by the time we got to Vegas, we couldn't hear out of my right ear, and he couldn't hear out of his left ear because the wind was blasting.
You know, Peter was like chill, right? So he didn't even have his like go out gear on. So he was in his cutoff, he was in his basketball shorts. I was like dressed. I was like, when we get there, when we park the car, we're going. And like of course like the AC went out, so I was like drenched in sweat when we got there. So I had to change.
We didn't even pit stop. We just one shot.
Yeah, and I think Dave, also, aren't you the one that told me? I'm pretty sure it was you. You told me a story of you were with your boys going to Vegas. You partied on the way back. You stopped at State Line, and one of your boys was going the wrong way, and you like, fuck it.
No, because this is what happened. So usually, like on the way back, everybody's like exhausted, right? So it's like whoever drive first, be like, hey, we need to like change driver like midway. So I think we're like almost to Barstow. It's not even at State Line. We're almost at Barstow. So like everybody got up, but like we're all like sleepy. So we just like grabbed some drinks and used the bathroom, and we went up. And the guy was like, oh yeah, like somebody else had to drive now. Like I'm too tired. So like we switched. And then like when we woke up, I was like, yo, it doesn't feel right. Like we should be seeing like LA traffic and stuff like that. But it feels like we're like driving faster and faster. And then I looked up, and then like all the way far, I was like, yo, I think like I look at my friend like to the left. I was like, I think you drove the wrong way. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, I can see the Vegas light like directly ahead of us. And he was like, oh shit.
What did you guys end up doing? Did you guys stay in Vegas?
No, we just ended up staying one extra night because there's no point. Like, it was like, I think like by the time we realized, it was like everybody's tired. By the time we realized, it was like 6 p.m. or something because we didn't leave until like maybe like 2:33.
Did you guys party or just knock out?
What do you think?
I know, Ray. What would you have done, Ray?
Yeah, what would you have done, Ray? That's exactly what we did.
All I know is my days of driving to Vegas are over.
Yeah,
I can't do that.
No more driving.
No more. It's like
I don't think people realize how much friendship and trial and error and all that stuff went into just like being able to like collectively win a championship and party together, live together, and be brothers forever together. For like it's a big deal, man. I mean, like I feel like it's one of those things where like teams say that they're close and stuff like that, but there's like a real family here. You know what I mean? And it's beyond basketball. But
it's hard to appreciate it when you're living it because obviously, when you're winning and losing, there's all these like arguments and drama. But when they all said and done, you're like, God damn, I miss those moments. I wish I could go back and relive it. And that's when you start realizing just how like fast life is moving. Because I felt like around those times, I felt like just shit was just going so slow. But as I've gotten older, it's like every year is going by faster and faster. And so I relish those moments now that when you see friends and you do stuff with them, because some of those it's hard to repeat a good time. Because we always say that, let's do it again, but it's really hard. So when you're in those moments, you gotta take full advantage to maximize the time and your fun with the people you're with.
One of those good times was when I think Peter, you live with Ray and Danny, and you guys have your own crib, and I just like crash it like almost like every other day because I think my school at that time was really close to your house. So every day after school, like regardless of what happened, I just like stop by.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I would just like grab food or just like hang out, like
good time.
We could be playing basketball, or we could be like or 2K with Danny and Ray. Actually, Ray was not really present with us. Ray was always with some kind of girl.
Oh, this kid's getting edited out.
Oh yeah. I remember at the time I was dancing. That's right. I do remember.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying as a trying to give you a bad name, but Ray was very popular.
Smooth.
Oh, good.
Smooth. Ray was smooth. So I mean, I remember I think like for over a year, like I would just like stop by every day and just like, hey, like whether we're gonna go play basketball or it's like end up playing video game, just like chill. Yeah.
Those days is what this is about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think we've gone far enough to where we can look back and be like, you know what? That was pretty dope. That was pretty. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and where'd you grow up?
I don't know if a lot of you guys know where Taiwan is. Taiwan's literally a tiny island right next to China.
Yeah, I'm Chinese, so I don't recognize that as a country.
Oh,
and that is literally kind of how I grew up.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
The political tension between China and Taiwan is what really shaped a lot of the Taiwanese people, because we all live in a very uncertain kind of political situation. So we literally have our own president. We have our own election. We're democratic. However, we always have this big uncertainty looming over our head as when the Chinese government is actually eventually, are they going to overtake us by force or by some kind of economic pressure that they could basically enforce on us, by stopping trades or doing all kinds of stuff, So that's kind of what really shaped a lot of the people from Taiwan. They're always a little bit more anxious. They're always a little bit more cautious about political stuff. So they don't really always talk openly about their political affiliation. So, and it's crazy because I grew up, my grandparents, my mom's dad, he was a political official. So he was the vice secretary of education in Taiwan.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So he has a really strong political affiliation. So at that time, it was kind of like, is the family going to be in some kind of danger when the Chinese government really tried to take over Taiwan? And I don't know if anybody know the history between China and Taiwan. They were one before, right? Yeah. Like we were all from China. What happened was there was a national party and a communist party. So the Communist Party actually won the Civil War and basically secured China. The National Party basically flew to Taiwan to take like refugee, basically. And then eventually over the years, it becomes kind of like, were we the same country or were we not the same country? We have such different political beliefs. One is a communist country, one is a democratic country. So that kind of just evolved into kind of the current state where the Taiwanese people think China belonged to them, but we don't have any kind of control over it. And the Chinese people think Taiwan is part of China. And that's kind of the political tension between the two. So that's kind of where I grew up. I just want to say, like, politics aside, I think from an Asian country growing up, I think we touched upon it earlier, just the amount of education pressure that the government or the society puts onto you. So, that's why a lot of people, when they either come from China or Taiwan or even like Korea or Japan, when they come over to the States, they're not really looking for kind of the one size fits all education system. I think they believe that when they come over to the US, the education system is able to allow them to really pursue what they really want to do. So, yeah.
Why do you think it is that, or what was it about your mindset when you got here that you were able to, and it's not better or worse, but able to kind of separate yourself from that mindset that we're talking about and become who you are today in America?
I think playing sports was a big factor. Besides basketball, when I was in high school, I joined the volleyball team because I couldn't make the basketball team, to be honest.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to West High in Torrance.
Torrance, gotcha.
Yeah. So I tried to make the basketball team, but I couldn't make it.
Were you like a setter in volleyball or something?
I was actually an outside hitter, so
Oh, okay.
I play the four position. So
Yeah.
of course I was like, on the varsity team I was like the sub. I only go on there when we're up by like 20 or some shit like that. So I'm like the human victory torch. So whenever I'm on the court, we're like we won. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. But I mean, it was kind of like having that sports mentality really helped me. I don't want to say differentiate me, but it really did like give me a different perspective. And like I made a lot of friends through sports, and I was able to assimilate to the cultures and make friends in high school, albeit my accent or albeit my kind of immigration status. I think that was one of the biggest thing for me. And even when I was in Taiwan, we moved a lot because my dad's job constantly make him move. So I lived in the north part of Taiwan, like Taipei, which is the capital, and we also moved over to the south in Kaohsiung, which was like the second capital in Taiwan, but it was definitely a very different experience culturally. Like people in Taipei is a little bit more international. People in Kaohsiung a little bit more local. So I had to like adapt to very different environment when I was young, and I always done it through sports. Like I always, make friends through basketball or make friends through baseball when I was younger. I just kind of carry that mentality over here. So I was like, hey, if we play sports, we're on the same team, we're gonna be friends. So that's just kind of how that works out for me. And it taught me like teamwork, it taught me like friendship, and I think that's one of the biggest difference, because a lot of people in Taiwan, they don't care about sports. And so when I was growing up, when I spent time playing basketball and stuff like that, people think it was a waste of time. But it definitely really helped me to like make myself at home when I was here. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious because like Ray, well, I mean, like, you kind of came around the same time or same age that, David did. And I mean, was sports something that you used to try to kind of assimilate and connect as well?
Oh, 100%. As you was talking, I'm like, that's how I assimilated for sure. I was a huge soccer. I played a lot of soccer when I was growing up. Unfortunately, when I came to the States, soccer wasn't very popular. So because of that, I started playing basketball, and I made all of my friends through sports. And to me, sports was an escape from everything else that was going on in my life. And it was just the art of competition, and practicing something and then actually applying it, in the game, and actually, compete. It was fun. And also, being in America at that time, there was emphasis on being healthy and eating right. So I used to drink milk every day. Every day. Those got milk commercials got to me.
Well, I mean, turned out pretty good for you, right? You
Yeah,
got that
right?
physique going on, man.
No, I thought I was gonna be a lot taller than this. I've been this tall since junior high. Milk commercials were a lie. No, but yeah, I completely identify with what you're saying, because that's how I assimilated. Because when I came here, I wasn't like I came here with a bunch of other Ghanaians, or I was in a black community. I came here and I lived in K-Town. So
so you and Wang, that's why you guys get along so well.
So when you guys started calling K-pop, I knew exactly what you meant. I'm like, oh yeah,
no, true. What was that immigration experience like for you? Like, what was the most shocking to you? What did you feel was one of the largest hurdles, even with sports, from a cultural perspective?
I mean, obviously, the first thing was the language, right? Because the language barrier was real. Albeit English was one of the academic field that we had to study when we're in Taiwan, but to be able to actually fluently communicate and be able to write and just having all your everyday life be in English was difficult. So I mean, obviously when I first came here, I was in like the ESL class and stuff like that. And one of the craziest memory I had was I didn't know that a lot of things in the States, the tax comes after. So when they were commercializing, like, oh, you can get a burger for 99 cents, I literally took $1 to the store, expecting to be able to get like a burger. And then when I was paying, they're like, oh, it's $1.03 or something like that. And I was like, I thought it was 99 cents. And they're like, oh, it's tax. I was like, why wouldn't you tell me that? I was like, why didn't you tell me? Like, you could have just said the burger is $1.05. Like, I would bring enough money, but now I only have $1. And then they would just be like, oh yeah, just take some change, like people left over, and like sell me the burger. But I was just like, that's one of the first things that I actually went to the store and bought something for myself the first time. And I was like, that memory was so fresh, because I was like, why wouldn't they just tell you like what the price is for real? Like, why would they have to play that game? And I just think it's because like every state there's a different tax, so they don't want to say that. So anyway, I think that's when a country is so big, you have that problem. Like in Taiwan, it's like everybody have the same tax. You know, like you can literally travel from the north to the south in one day. You know, driving. You know, it's like 10 hours or something like that. You can get there. So it's like there's not a problem. So, but here it's like, yeah, it's actually a big problem. So it's like one of the things. Like first thing that I remember so vividly, like it's such a cultural difference. And the other thing is like Thanksgiving. I don't know if you know, but during Thanksgiving, that's actually when Asian people go to Vegas, because Asian people don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Yep. So it's like, oh, we have a free 3-day, 4-day vacation. Okay, like we'll just go gamble, and then like all the Chinese stars, like, you know, like whatever, Jay Chow or whatever, they actually would go to Vegas to have their concert during Thanksgiving, because that's when most of the Asian people would be there. So that's like one of the biggest cultural difference, because I remember during Thanksgiving, people were like, oh, are you going to get turkey? What are you going to do? You're going to watch like,
what the fuck is that?
We're going to watch football at home. And then I was like, I don't even know what football was. When I got here, I was like, no, like we're going to Vegas. And they're like, oh, you don't have family? Like you don't want to celebrate having like carving the turkey together or something like that? I was like, oh, there's buffet in Vegas. Yeah. So like, that's literally like one of the other cultural difference that I noticed when I first got here. Like everybody's like, oh yeah, it's like family time. You know, like we're going to like do turkey and stuff like that. And then like my family just go to Vegas. So
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised here, but Thanksgiving was still weird to me. I was like, why would you have turkey when you can have chicken? I don't know. It's like, but you know, you learn about all this, like these pilgrim stuff, and you know, Christopher Columbus, and being grateful for that, and then later on, you're like, what the fuck are we celebrating again?
Yeah, the bullshit programs. Yeah, I mean, not bullshit programs. Actually, the bullshit programs that killed all the Indians.
But I feel like that's an Asian thing, and you know, obviously, much like Jewish people too. Like Christmas, we're not doing anything either. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, our restaurants are open. That's why like a lot of people will be having Chinese food during Christmas. It's because like you can count on that shit.
Jewish people actually have Chinese food on. Was it on Thanksgiving? Wait, Thanksgiving?
Christmas.
Yeah, that's right, Christmas.
Yeah, that's the only stores that are open. So
Chelsea's family came over to our place, and then we just so happened to order Chinese food. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, I just ordered Chinese food because I like Chinese food. And like, yeah, it's a Jewish tradition to order Chinese food during Christmas. I'm like, oh, I never knew that.
So actually, my family during Thanksgiving and Christmas were in Vegas.
It took me a while to get used to Thanksgiving too, because I didn't really get it, you know, and my family wasn't really big, or you know, if and we weren't always together, so it was always you know, I would always get invited to other Thanksgivings, and it was always kind of awkward, you know, being there, not be with my family, but then I couldn't really be with my family, so it was like Thanksgiving it wasn't like something that I could say I remember looked forward to. I looked forward to that time off, but it was always like an awkward period because everybody's talking about family. Like me, or for us, like, you know, that for other reasons, you know, that we're not talking about right now, the family cohesiveness wasn't really there.
Yeah.
But besides the bullshit that they taught us in school, like it, I over time I came to really appreciate it. Being thankful for not just your family, but the people around you, your health, your life, things like that. So it to me, it's always a good time to reflect.
And I don't know if you guys know, but Peter used to host like Friendsgiving and like Christmas parties at his house, and like that's the only like kind of family events I actually attend, friends event, because when I was in college, my families were not here. Like my families were still in Taiwan, so I didn't really like celebrate with anybody. So I actually just like always like hang out with Peter, and like so I consider that like my family event that I would go to. And then I'll be at Vegas for the rest of the time.
Was there anything culturally, not that you felt different, but like you actually really liked, that was really different from what you're used to when you first got here, outside of sports?
I think there is less of. It's crazy, but I think people think there is racism here in the state, but there is some crazy, like, I don't want to say racism because it's not really based on race, but prejudice in like Asian countries. And they would judge you based on your status. They would judge you based on kind of like where you're from, sometimes even like within the same culture. They would judge you based on your education capabilities. So like
your skin.
Yeah. No, but you know what I mean? Like they would judge you based on a lot of the like how rich you are. So like when I actually came here, I actually thought that the States is a very open place in terms of people don't really pass that kind of judgment that fast. And maybe because I'm lucky, I live in a bubble in California where not that happens. But I remember that when I was young, people would be like, "Oh, if you're not have good grades, like we don't want to hang out with you. If you don't like, it's crazy." So like when I was here, I feel more accepted to be who I am instead of trying to be something that I wasn't. And it's crazy because I think that mentality carries all the way in Asia. Like even when you're older, like people will be asking you like, "Where did you graduate?" Or like, and they will like base, kind of, they will start judging you based on that. And like, "Oh, do you have a house? Do you have a car?" That's kind of how they, determine if you're like marriage material and stuff like that. So that kind of like culture that based on, like a lot of material things and a lot of like things that you can't control, like people can't control, if they're really good at math. Some people are just not really good at math and they're, much better to be a writer and stuff like that, but they don't appreciate that in the Chinese culture. They want everybody to be uniform. They judge people with the same kind of standard, even though everybody's different. But I feel like here, people are like, "Oh, you're really into basketball. I like that," or it'd be like, "Oh, I'm also a big basketball fan," or I'm really into writing or certain type of music, and people be like, "Oh yeah," like, so I feel like that's like the difference. Like people actually be able to accept you for really who you are, versus kind of in Asia, which is a really strange thing to say at this particular juncture of our society. But that's how I felt when I first came here, because I think everybody heard the myth of, Asian kids. Like the parents only want the Asian kid to be like three things. You're either a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, right? Like that's the three acceptable profession for an Asian kid. So that's basically how the culture is being run in Taiwan. Like you have to be those three professions to be considered like a quality human being, like
I just think humans have done a lot of great things, but overall we're pieces of shit. Because like I think I'm realizing a lot more and more as I get older. Just like we're all the same species, but we're so quick to dehumanize anybody that's different from us. where even though we all share the same blood, you know, like our biology is the same, but just because we're different from us, we immediately dehumanize them and look at them as subspecies. And I can't even think about looking at anybody that way, you know. And I mean, that's probably because I grew up, but it's hard for me to see why like we're like that, you know. And it's crazy to me.
If you grew up Asian, you would see it clearly. And I'm not bashing on Asian people. I'm just speaking from like straight up experience, right? Like if you no, and this is the truth. It's not even like, oh, I don't want to, but like you're raised in a certain way where like status, merit and all that stuff outweighs everything. And if anybody looks different from you or acts different from you, it's like, oh shit, don't do that. Don't be his friend. Don't get near him. And there is racism. You know what I mean?
When you take a step back, it's like, why is this fucking silly? That's the part that's like crazy to me. Because we've all been, I'm sure all of us have been taught to dislike something or someone for whatever reason. When you take a step back, it's like it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
It makes perfect. It's the most simplest answer of all time. Your family name. You uphold and honor your family name, whatever that may look like. It's your ethnicity, then it's your ethnicity. You always have pride in whatever the hell it is. And you know what? You're gonna fucking kill things to make sure that shit happens. And
ridiculous.
But that's the answer. Yeah. Like that is literally like for the sake of sustainability for your own people, whether it be your family or your friends, you're going to do that shit.
Maybe it's me being an idealist, but you'll kind of wish it could be just like sports, where you're a Houston Rockets fan, we're a Lakers fan, and then that's the end of it. Granted, there are some extreme cases like that shit that happened at Dodger Stadium with the guys, but like it just sucks as human beings that we can, look at the less fortunate or someone that's different based on their color or socioeconomic status and think, oh, I'll spit on you, you're human, I'll kill you, or you're like it's just like. I can't do that anymore, and it's crazy to me that, there's still that much hate for someone who's just like you. It's crazy. But
I mean, I would ask something here, and a lot of these kind of, I don't want to say hatred, but like cultural, I would say, like one Asian culture being against the other Asian culture. A lot of them stem from kind of the wars that happened like centuries ago, and like now it's crazy because some of these still really hit home for the older generation. Like my dad, he is like one of the nicest guys. However, he does not approve of Japan. Like,
of course,
he is like, I would not set foot on the Japanese land. If I can help it, I would not buy any Japanese product. And like that's kind of his belief because he was taught when he was really young that the Japanese people did some horrific things to the Chinese people, right?
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, but it goes to my point. Like even back then, why did they why did they do that? Like I'm going back like centuries. Like it just that hate that humans have that's not gone away. That's what it's bonkers to me. So like. There was religious persecution, back then. Or you're a Muslim, I'm gonna fucking kill you. It's like the fuck,
It's really as simple as survival. It's like if I let this culture overtake mine, then I'm done. If I let and back then, like if you're talking about centuries ago, it meant that. Like if I don't kill them, they might kill me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if I don't kill like the Middle East and the Crusades and all that stuff, it's like their livelihood, their belief is at stake. And if we don't kill them, there's going to be doubt in my family. We're saying why now because war is not necessary. But you take it back just like 1,000 years ago, that was your only choice. You know what I mean? There was no other way to do things. And I mean, people just didn't trust people as well. There was not like, merit or trust in like the facts that were being dropped. And people felt like they were more right. No way to verify that shit. So it still goes back to like survival for back in the day. Nowadays, I don't know what the fuck the excuse is. I don't.
It's just
to your point, Ray. Yeah. To your point, but like I understand what Wang's saying 100%. I agree with that 100%.
It's unfortunate that we can't, we coexist. We can be different and still coexist and still respect each other's lives, but it's a weird time we live in.
I mean, take us back 100 years. Like the three of us wouldn't be sitting here. Like Wang wouldn't like my people wouldn't like Wang's people, and both our people wouldn't like your people. That's just actually no. And I'm not trying to be PC. That's actually the truth,
It's
right?
truth. Yeah.
I mean, but Dave, like your dad's thing, right? Like he still won't do that to this day because he feels like the Japanese wrong the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that true?
It is. Yeah.
Isn't that true? I mean, and the question that you would ask, Ray, is why did the Japanese do that?
Yeah.
And why do you think they did that? I mean, like, I think it has something to do with imperialism and ego and self-righteousness, but I don't know. Right
now you have the Chinese who are persecuting the Uyghurs. A lot of people don't know that. And that's some fucked up shit. So 100 years from now, the Uyghur people are going to be like, oh no, like a Uyghur parents going to tell their daughter or son, don't marry a Chinese person or don't marry a Han Chinese person. It's the cycle keeps going. There's always hate at every level.
And David, I mean, and you mentioned this earlier, like this thing with Taiwan, right? There's this feud going on right now. Not a feud, but this constant fear that when's Big Brother going to come back? And it's confusing because it's not like you guys aren't Chinese. You know what I mean? But politically, there is no affiliation that you guys want to associate with, and it's happening now. You know what I mean? So so I can even see now that like Chinese will look at Taiwanese people like, what the hell do they think they're doing? And the Taiwanese people, all they're trying to do is like, we're just trying to build a life for ourselves. You know what I mean?
It has always been a very sensitive topic, because like you said, like ethnically and bloodline wise, we're the same people. And the only difference is the government system that we believe in, and the fact that the Taiwanese people, because they embraced democracy and capitalism, we were able to get ahead in terms of socioeconomic status earlier on. I mean, the China people definitely, the Chinese people from China definitely caught up in terms of really embracing capitalism and stuff like that. But for a while, like when I was growing up, like people in China were like poor, like a lot of them, and like people from Taiwan would look down on that, saying like, hey, like that's what they got, like they believe in communism, blah blah blah. So it was just kind of that kind of environment. So a lot of people, even like in my generation, still like look down on the people from China, saying like, oh, they're less educated, they're not, social, economically well off in comparison. So it's like a whole crazy situation. And I think coming to US where everybody kind of blend into one melting pot was actually the first time I was like, hey, like they're just normal people like me. They play basketball. They, enjoyed specific things that I also enjoy. So I was like, hey, like it was weird for me. Like when I was growing up, I was like, I had this image of like what they are, and then when I came here, I was like, oh, that's not who they are.
There were probably like Taiwanese people here, but they've been here longer than you, right? Like, how do they treat you?
Yeah, I mean, like, when I call myself a fob now, it's because I already let the past go. When the first time that somebody called me a fob, it was like a hurtful thing, right? Because like, people would be like, yeah, you don't know what's going on, you don't speak the language, you don't know like how things work here. Yeah, but now I'm actually proud of being a fob because I was able to basically conquer all the hurdles that was thrown my way. And I was like, yeah, I was a fob, and now I'm part of the society, and I was able to contribute.
I feel like, Ray, I mean, like, I'm assuming you also had that similar experience amongst like your African American friends, and especially when you first got here too, right?
I spoke English, but I didn't speak English like everyone else, and I was the outsider. The kid from Africa. Everybody thought I ate monkey soup and I had a pet giraffe. Yeah, it's the truth, man. Hanging around all my Asian friends, it was always, I constantly heard, Ray's trying to be Asian, Ray's trying to be Asian. And for me, that wasn't the case. I was just, you're a product of your environment. I was just trying to just be me, but
Ray lived in Koreatown. It's like, what the fuck? It felt like home to him.
It was really funny because I think when you, Ray, and Danny lived together, it was like a little mini UN, right? Because it's like Peter was like Asian and Ray was from Africa and Danny was like Irish. So like it was
And
crazy
Korean.
because when I went over there, I was like I felt like home because like everybody's like accepting, nobody cared, like, and there was like always like random people showing up at Peter's house.
Yeah, you can thank Ray for that.
Me?
No, I'm not just talking about girls.
No, I'm playing.
But it was like literally like friends from like all over the place and like neighbors and or whoever. I can't even like count, but it was like I was there and I was like not expecting to like socialize because I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go to Peter's house and play some video game. Like, and then like when I got there, it was like, oh shit, there was like 50 people there. What the hell?
The one thing I know for sure about David is that no matter who he's with or where he's at, he's David.
Yeah.
He's Dave Wang. He's the Wangster. I mean, so long it's not like a professional or academic setting, Dave Wang was the Wangster everywhere he went.
You never fit the Asian stereotypes that I heard growing up. You know, you weren't meek. You know, like just the general stereotypes you hear about Asians. You always
who the hell said we were meek?
It's just a stereotype that you heard. And I had my own stereotypes that were going against me, but you two definitely proved that stereotype to be wrong. And I think that's why it's really awesome to grow up and just not just grow up, but just have people from different backgrounds be around you, because it changes you, and I think it changes you for the better. Instead of being around people who are just like you, your mind kind of becomes narrow. You become narrow-minded, So, but you both are really, really like alpha males, and it's growing up. Alpha male and Asian man wasn't something that you really, were taught, which is completely inaccurate, because you had, Bruce Lee was the first alpha male that, that I got exposed to via the media. Then I had, Jackie Chan, Ip Man came out, so, and of course, let's not forget, the best one, Chow Yun Fat. Oh man, I love it. He wasn't into martial arts, but there's something about Chow Yun Fat's aura on screen. I was like, damn, who is this guy?
I mean, he was famous in the late 80s, early 90s as like the godfather of like Asia. Yes. So like all his roles in the movies has always been like gangster and like godfather, kind of like that kind of role. So when he actually like played a role that's kind of like humorous in the US movie, I was like, that's not him.
What was your reaction to like American entertainment when you first got here? Just the variety of it. I mean, like there were like just so many different types of movies and shows and things like that. I mean, Asia does too, but like, I mean, America in itself, right? Like the variety of movies. Like, what did you think of that?
I think it was, I mean, honestly, I learned a lot of my English through shows. Mm-hmm. And I would have to say it was very surprising to me that there were that many different that many different stars in different ethnicity. Because that was, like in Asia, everybody's Asian. So like all the stars were Asian. And they're not really, I don't know, like the amount of content that the US has and the amount of like fanship that the US people have in terms of entertainment is drastically different. And I would say that because a lot of the shows in Asia, they copy like the US show, right? Mm-hmm. Because like the US has the innovation. And the reason why like Asian people is not as innovative or imaginative is because it's the product of their own education, right? Because they don't encourage that.
Yeah.
So like people that actually ended up in like the entertainment industry, people that can't study. It's like people that are doing production, people that are like writing scripts and stuff like, because like if you go to Asia, nobody's going to be like, I want to be a director or like I want to be the best screenwriter there's ever was. Like those are not like the first job choices. Like, and like if you ever say that like in a family meeting, like your parents would disown you. Like it's like, what are you talking about? Like you're not gonna be able to make money or be like, you know, like I mean, I think now it's better because, you know, the rise of kind of the internet and like the YouTube and all that kind of stuff, and like people actually see how much money those people make. So the perspective actually changed a little bit. But back in the days when kind of you don't really have your own platform, there's only like, you know, 5 cable TVs. That's not like a job of desire, and people don't actually study to become that. Like people that go to those kind of schools are like, you didn't get high enough test score. Like that's why you didn't get into a good high school, or you didn't get into a reputable university and in a reputable field like engineering or lawyer or doctor. So the people that are in those fields were like, all they ended up doing was like copying ideas from other countries. So
this is really interesting because what you brought up is kind of something that you kind of broke the mold, or at least broke barriers with too in yourself, right? You kind of did that in modern day sense because from what I understand, you know, you went to college, UCLA, biochem, and then you went ahead and you got your master's in that. You know, you did your, you know, your oral, your dissertation, all that stuff, and then you actually worked in that field with your master's for a while. And then I remember you talking to me and saying, hey, you know what? This is going to seem like a gamble to like your family, but you're going to take it. You're like, I'm going to go to business school. Now, in a lot of ways, that's not being a doctor, that's not being a lawyer, and that's not being an engineer. Why did you do that? Or why did you feel like you had to do that?
I mean, I literally went to biochemistry because of my parents, right? Because I was like, oh, you know, you should be a doctor, and so that's why I went to school for biochemistry. And in the time that I was at UCLA, I was preparing to get my MCAT and stuff like that. I actually had an EMT license because that's kind of like a stepping stone to becoming like into the medical field. So I got a taste of what that was like. During my experience of being an EMT, I kind of realized that like I don't want to be a doctor because the emotional burden that the doctors has, I don't think that I want to live with that. Like, I don't know if you ever thought about it, but the doctor is always there at somebody's worst day.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're telling the patients that they have cancer. You're, you know, telling the family members that, sorry, we did everything we could. And like that kind of like helplessness feeling, like I just don't want my job to be something like that. So like when I was finishing up my college, I ended up not going to my like medical school interviews, like because I was like, hey, that's not what I want to do.
Interesting.
So because I took the MCAT, I went through the application process. There were like maybe 1 or 2 schools that I was at the final process where I just need to go to the interview. And usually like when you're at the interview process, unless you really fucked up, like you say something crazy at the interview, like you will probably get into the school, you know? So I literally just didn't show up. I just said like, hey, I don't want to go. So I had a really long discussion with my parents and I was like, hey, like, I don't think I want to be a doctor. And then they're like, okay, you know what? Like, you already have this biochemistry degree. Why don't you try to go to like get a master and see what you want to do? Maybe you be a pharmacist or a dentist, or, you know, they're still thinking about like doing something medically related, or, you know, get a PhD, you know, be a professor or something like that. Yeah. So like I went through kind of that route. So I was like, all right, I'll compromise. I'll go get a master and see where that takes me. So during that master, like honestly, when I was in the master's, I was at Peter's house and your house, you know, right? Yeah. Like I didn't do any studying, honestly. Yeah. I was just like trying to get by. Yeah. So, I mean, I was getting by, you know, and I graduated, but like that's not what I want to do. And when you actually has a science degree as a master, it's like one of the most useless degree because you're not good enough to like you're not a PhD, so like all these like educational like research kind of job, they kind of look upon you like, you didn't get enough credential to like lead a project. And then when you go into the business world, when you try to enter into a business world, to be like, what are you doing here? You're like a scientist, you know? So like I was having a really tough time during that time after I graduated my master, trying to get a job. And I actually couldn't find one in LA. So I actually had to move to San Diego. That's where like all the biotech companies were. So I actually moved down to San Diego and got a job doing research. And like, man, like San Diego time, it seems like a different time zone. Like time stands still in San Diego. Like I remember, maybe it's because I don't have friends there, and like just like my job is so boring. Like I feel like every day, from the moment I wake up until the job ends, I feel like I'm like lived through 2 days, and then the moment that I got off work to like my bedtime, it feels like another day, just because I'm just like don't know what to do with myself. So it was like, I think I was only in SD for like about less than a year. And I was just like, I can't take it anymore. And I decided to like make a pivot. And I went back to school for business school. And I think me and my family had like a little family revolution, just because like, they're like, what are you doing? Like, you know, you're like on your way to like be a doctor. You're like forgiving your kind of biochemistry degree, like wasting a lot of money and time, and then talking to me like how old I was, and like I need to really start thinking about like what I want to do with my career. So I was like, you know what, like I have to do this because I would never know. And like, with the current degree that I have, like I'm not going to be able to get a job like a regular graduate from college, because like at least they have a relevant degree in terms of like business or econ or something like that, where people like, oh yeah, that makes sense. For me, the story is weird, right? It's like, oh, you're a scientist for 5 years, now you want to be in advertising? You know, what are you doing?
I mean, was there a reason why, or you just like that was something else, or did you have a reason for that?
I think it's just because I think we talked a lot about like how kind of different I am than most of the Asian immigrants that I, you know, enjoy making new friends, new connection. I kind of embrace kind of the working as a team, you know, and playing sport definitely helped with that. And I understand like the value of communication and the value of being able to position something. Like, you know, not always the best product wins, right? So it's really about how you really position yourself and your product. So like managing my own brand, basically. So because of that, I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe marketing is a much better thing for me to do. And I think I have that revelation when I was working in SD, because I had the most fun doing research when I was working with a marketing team. Like they come in and they try to ask me, hey, like, what's the strength of our product? How would you communicate that to our consumers? Oh, look at our consumer report. These are some of the behaviors that they exhibit when they use our product. How would you kind of improve the product based on the research that we did? And I was like, oh, you know what? This is actually really interesting. So it got me to think that this is something that I'll probably be better at instead of, you know, stuck in the lab. So when I actually went to business school, that's what I focused on, consumer behavior, analytics, and marketing. And I think I was lucky because the entire marketing industry is transitioning to like data, right? Big data, analytics. And now my scientific degree actually was justified, because when people interview me, they're like, oh, you know, how come you're now thinking about marketing? And I was like, you know what? Like my scientific degree actually gave me a really strong background in numbers, like statistics, analytics, talking about data. So that actually become my secret weapon when I was interviewing. Because like they can find 1,000 marketers that have a marketing degree, but there is only a few of us that has the business degree, the marketing degree, and a very scientific, analytic driven background. So I think that's what really like differentiate me in my career.
What is the one thing that you would really teach your son about, if there was like one or two things you would really want him to know about life?
Don't listen to your parents. I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I would just probably say something like, make sure you do something that would really make you happy. Because I think if I'm still in the biochemistry or the medical profession, I wouldn't be happy. And I think that's something that I was always really thankful that I make that decision to get away from it, because I think if, I were my, 15-year-old self, like I was too scared to speak up that, I don't want to go biochemistry at UCLA, and I went with it, and I spent the next 7 years trying to get to a degree that, that I wasn't really happy about, not that I wasn't proud of it, but it didn't really do me anything until I really repositioned myself. And I mean, Peter was there actually when I graduated from my master's, and like nobody came to my graduation. My parents were not nearby. My classmates, I wasn't really close with them because I was just always at Peter's house. So like I told Peter, hey, I'm graduating today. And Peter was like, what? Like you're not going to, you're not going up there to get your diploma or anything. I didn't go to get my diploma. I have them like mail it to me. And then, but Peter was like, hey, you know what? We need to go celebrate, and we're going to get like pho or something. Remember that?
Did you guys go to Vegas too?
No, graduation was like after the dissertation. So I had my oral exam.
No, I'm saying, did you guys go to Vegas too to celebrate?
No, it was kind of like a surreal moment for me, because like I graduated and I felt like there was nothing to celebrate about.
Yeah.
Because it was like, that's not a degree I want. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to get a job, and even if I'm going to like the job that I'm going to get. So like, I think that was the time where I was like super lost. I was like, I don't know what I want to do professionally. Like, but like, I still play basketball every day.
I mean, to this day, are you able to identify like a consistent thing in your life, whether it be an idea, a person, or a thing that has always kind of motivated you to get to where you are now, and you may continually use it to get further in your life? Like, is there anything?
I think it's always like proving somebody wrong. and I think it's like, it stems from being very competitive ever since I was a kid, right? And then like when you lose on basketball, or when you lose like a video game, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna beat you next time. I'm gonna prove you wrong. Like you beat me this time, but I'm gonna beat you the next time, and I'm gonna do it my way.
I couldn't get you the fuck out of my house,
and you're gonna be loud about beating you too.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's like people are like, oh, maybe you should try like a different team, or you should use like a different player. But no, like I know that this will work. So it's kind of like a little bit stubborn, but it's like I have to do it my own way, because it's like that's the only way I know how to do it. And I think, obviously there are times where it didn't work, and I have to like self-evaluate. It's like, okay, there's something that's not working. Like, what was the problem? For example, like during that time when I was like, didn't know like what I want to do, and I have to really think about like, oh, okay, is this something that I want to continue to spend my effort to make sure that I pursue this path, or I need to change direction? And I think that's the time where I had a lot of time when I was in San Diego. Like I really like sat with myself and like start to think like, okay, like how do I really reevaluate like how I want to pursue moving forward? And I think just like the fact that the mentality is like proving somebody wrong, it's like, you know, I have to prove my parents like, hey, like I don't have to be a doctor to be successful, and I like prove to people that call me Fob, like I can be just as good, if not better than them in this society. I mean, I prove people wrong thinking that I can't play basketball as an Asian. You know, I just like, you know, came out of nowhere.
When did that happen?
Like all the time, you don't remember? Yeah, but like, you know, I think that has been like the constant theme, like trying to prove somebody wrong, but not in a way where it like you know, like make them feel bad, but it's like to self-validate that, you know, this is something that could work if you really work hard to it.
You're just trying to pleasantly surprise people.
Yeah, it's like when I first played basketball with Peter, I didn't think you could move that fast. Like I was pleasantly surprised when Peter had a quick first step.
Yeah, he does this thing where he sounds like a Nas. He always does that.
Hey guys, you guys don't breathe when you guys play. What's wrong with you guys?
I thought this was a very, very eye-opening for me because I obviously don't know you as well as Peter. We were always good buddies, but it was refreshing to hear about your past, and you validated a lot of things I already thought about you. You know, I'm glad that we were able to cross paths and that you're part of my life. You know, so.
Awesome.
You are your own secret weapon, and people don't see you coming, but you know you always make believers out of them. And at the end of the day, I'm just glad I was there at the beginning, and I was able to see that before he got real good at his life. You know what I mean? So, you know, I just want to thank you so much for being on our podcast and
of course,
giving us insights on who you are and sharing your stories with us, and most of which I might edit out. But but with that being said, I mean, give Michelle and Donnie, my nephew, our love, and you know, thank you again, Dave.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you. Hopefully we'll have you back again.
Yeah, definitely. Love to come back.
Until next time, man. You guys have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Peace out.